Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. Some days come and go without leaving a mark on history, while others echo through generations and continue to shape hearts centuries later. The 10th of Muharram, the day of Ashura, is one of those extraordinary days. It is a day filled with lessons of faith, sacrifice, patience, courage, and complete trust in Allah. It is a day that reminds us that truth and righteousness often come with trials, but those who remain steadfast for the sake of Allah never lose in the sight of their Creator. Throughout history, Allah chose this day for events that carried immense significance for humanity. It was a day connected with deliverance, mercy, and divine assistance. It was also a day that witnessed sacrifice and unwavering commitment to principles that could not be bought or broken. The events associated with this day continue to inspire millions of believers to stand firm upon truth, regardless of the challenges they face. As we reflect on Ashura, we are not simply remembering history. We are learning how to live our own lives with faith, patience, and trust in Allah. The stories of this day are not meant to remain in books or speeches. They are meant to live within our hearts and guide our actions when we face our own tests and difficulties. The lessons of Ashura continue to speak to every generation because truth, sacrifice, and reliance upon Allah never lose their value. There are moments in history that remind us that no matter how powerful oppression may appear, it can never stand forever against the will of Allah. Human beings often become impressed by strength, wealth, armies, and authority. But history repeatedly teaches us that true power belongs only to Allah. The day of Ashura carries one of the greatest examples of this lesson, a story that has inspired believers for generations and continues to give hope to those who feel overwhelmed by the difficulties of life. There was once a ruler who believed that his power had no limits. He controlled lands, commanded armies, and possessed wealth beyond imagination. So great was his arrogance that he convinced himself that he was above everyone else, and even claimed a position that belonged only to Allah. The people lived under fear and oppression, and many believed that nobody could challenge his authority. When power remains unchecked for too long, people begin to believe that injustice will continue forever. Yet Allah's plan was already unfolding in ways nobody could see. The very child that this ruler feared would one day become the reason for the end of his tyranny was raised under circumstances that could only have been arranged by Allah Himself. Sometimes Allah changes history not through massive armies or overwhelming numbers, but through means that no human being could ever predict. The story reminds us that Allah is always in control, even when circumstances suggest otherwise. There are moments in life when injustice appears stronger than truth, when wrongdoers seem untouchable, and when the future feels uncertain. During these moments, believers are reminded that appearances do not determine reality. What seems impossible to people is never impossible for Allah. Imagine the fear that existed among those who lived under oppression during that time. They watched their people suffer and wondered if freedom would ever come. Many probably lost hope and believed that their situation would never change. This is a feeling that many people still experience today in different forms. Some feel trapped by financial struggles, others by illness, grief, family problems, or personal challenges that seem impossible to overcome. The story of Ashura teaches us that situations can change in ways we cannot imagine. Allah can create opportunities where none exist, and solutions where human beings only see dead ends. There are moments when we stand in front of what feels like an impossible obstacle, convinced that there is no way forward. Yet often those moments become the beginning of Allah's help rather than the end of our story. One of the most powerful lessons from this event is the importance of trust in Allah during moments of fear and uncertainty. Trust is easy when life is comfortable and everything is going according to plan. True trust reveals itself when the road ahead is unclear and the heart is filled with questions. It is during these moments that believers are asked to hold firmly to their faith, even when they cannot yet see the outcome. Many people today carry fears about the future. They worry about providing for their families, about finding work, about their health, about their children, or about problems that seem larger than their ability to handle. Fear has a way of making problems appear even bigger than they are. It narrows our vision until we can only see the obstacle standing in front of us. Faith expands that vision again. It reminds us that while we may see the problem, Allah sees the solution. While we see the closed door, Allah sees the door that will open next. While we see delay, Allah sees preparation. The believer learns to look beyond the immediate situation and remember the one who controls every situation. Patience also plays an important role in this story. Divine help does not always arrive according to our preferred timeline. Human beings often want immediate answers and instant relief, but Allah's wisdom operates according to perfect timing rather than human impatience. Waiting does not mean abandonment. Delay does not mean rejection. Sometimes Allah is teaching lessons, strengthening faith, and preparing hearts before relief arrives. History shows us that moments of great difficulty often come immediately before moments of great change. The darkest part of the night comes just before dawn. The believer understands this and continues moving forward even when circumstances become difficult. Hope remains alive because hope in Allah is never wasted. There is another lesson hidden within this story that speaks directly to our modern lives. Many people feel powerless in the face of problems that seem much larger than themselves. They believe that because they are only one person, their efforts do not matter. But Allah has never measured success by numbers alone. History has repeatedly shown that sincerity, faith, and obedience can achieve what human calculations consider impossible. A single individual who trusts Allah completely can become stronger than circumstances that appear overwhelming. This does not mean life becomes easy or that difficulties disappear overnight, but it means the believer never faces those difficulties alone. The support of Allah changes everything. Ashura reminds believers that victory is not always defined by worldly standards. Sometimes victory means remaining faithful when compromise would be easier. Sometimes victory means keeping hope alive when despair feels more natural. Sometimes victory means continuing to trust Allah while the outcome remains hidden. The lessons of this day continue to speak to hearts centuries later, because every generation faces its own challenges, fears, and moments of uncertainty. Every generation needs reminders that oppression does not last forever, that hardship eventually gives way to ease, and that Allah's help can arrive from directions we never expected. Perhaps there is someone listening today who feels trapped by circumstances that seem impossible to change. Perhaps there is a burden that has been carried for so long that hope has started to fade. The message of Ashura is that no situation is beyond the power of Allah. The same Lord who changed history on that day continues to control every affair today. The believer moves through life with effort in their hands and trust in their heart, knowing that while people plan and circumstances change, Allah remains the one whose promise never fails and whose help never arrives too late. There are certain moments in history that refuse to fade with time. Centuries pass, generations come and go, empires rise and fall. Yet some events continue to live in the hearts of people because they represent values that are eternal. The events of Karbala are among those moments. They are remembered not because of numbers, wealth, or worldly power, but because they represent courage in the face of overwhelming odds, dignity in moments of hardship, and an unwavering commitment to truth and principle. History often teaches us that standing for what is right is not always easy. There are moments when following the crowd appears safer and more comfortable. There are times when silence seems easier than speaking the truth, and compromise seems easier than remaining firm upon principles. Yet there are people whose lives remind us that some values are too important to abandon, no matter how difficult the circumstances become. The events of Karbala remind believers that faith is not simply words spoken during moments of comfort. Faith is proven during moments of testing. It is easy to stand for justice when there is no cost attached to it. It is easy to remain firm when there is no pressure to change direction. The true strength of character appears when a person chooses what is right, even when the path becomes difficult. One of the greatest lessons that emerges from these events is that success in the sight of Allah is very different from success according to worldly standards. Human beings often measure success through numbers, influence, wealth, or victory in material terms. Allah teaches us that true success begins with sincerity, integrity, and obedience to Him, regardless of the outcome that people can see with their eyes. There are moments in every person's life when they are faced with choices between convenience and principle. A person may be pressured to compromise their values in order to gain acceptance, popularity, or personal benefit. They may be tempted to remain silent in the face of wrongdoing because speaking out feels uncomfortable or risky. These moments may not look dramatic from the outside, but they are personal versions of the same struggle between truth and compromise. The courage shown during difficult moments reminds us that one of the greatest forms of strength is remaining faithful to your values when abandoning them would make life easier. Character is not built when circumstances are comfortable. Character is built when a person chooses integrity despite pressure and remains committed to what is right despite fear. Patience also shines brightly through these lessons. Human beings naturally wish for ease and comfort. Nobody asks for hardship or difficulty. Yet life has a way of bringing challenges that test our hearts and reveal what truly exists within us. Patience does not mean the absence of sadness or pain. It means carrying that pain with trust in Allah and refusing to allow hardship to destroy faith. Many people today are fighting battles that nobody else can see. Some are carrying financial stress that keeps them awake at night. Some are facing illness, loneliness, family problems, or emotional pain that they hide behind smiles. Others are dealing with disappointments that have shaken their confidence and left them wondering whether things will ever improve. The lessons of sacrifice and steadfastness remind believers that hardship does not last forever and that difficult chapters do not define the entire story. Some of the strongest people are not those who avoided hardship, but those who walked through hardship while holding firmly to their faith and trust in Allah. Another powerful lesson is the importance of intention. In a world where people often seek recognition, approval, and praise, believers are reminded that actions performed sincerely for Allah carry value beyond what human eyes can measure. A sincere act may appear small in the eyes of people while carrying enormous weight with Allah. This changes the way a person lives their life. They no longer become dependent upon applause or recognition. They do what is right because it is right, not because people are watching. They help others because Allah sees them, even if nobody else notices. They remain honest because their relationship with Allah matters more than temporary worldly gain. The events of Karbala also remind us of the importance of dignity during times of hardship. Difficult circumstances often reveal the true nature of a person. Some people allow hardship to make them bitter, angry, or unjust toward others. Others use hardship as an opportunity to grow closer to Allah and become more compassionate toward those who are struggling. The believer understands that every trial contains an opportunity for spiritual growth. Pain can either push a person away from Allah or pull them closer to Him. The difference often lies in how the heart responds to the test. There is another lesson that remains deeply relevant today. Numbers do not determine truth. Many people assume that if the majority supports something, it must automatically be correct. History repeatedly shows that truth and falsehood are not measured by popularity. There have been many moments when standing for truth meant standing alone. This lesson matters greatly in a world where people often feel pressure to follow trends, opinions, and behaviors simply because they are common. The believer is taught to measure actions according to the guidance of Allah rather than public approval. Popularity changes with time, but truth remains unchanged. Perhaps one of the most beautiful aspects of these lessons is the reminder that sacrifice made for Allah is never wasted. Human beings may forget, history may move forward, and circumstances may change, but Allah never forgets the efforts made sincerely for His sake. Every act of patience, every moment of courage, every sacrifice, and every struggle is known to the one who records even the smallest good deed. These events continue to inspire hearts because they speak to universal human experiences. Every person faces moments when they must choose between fear and courage, between convenience and principle, between despair and hope. The lessons of steadfastness and sacrifice remind believers that no matter how difficult the test may become, remaining close to Allah is always the path that leads to true success. The values represented through these events continue to guide people centuries later because courage never becomes outdated, integrity never loses its value, and trust in Allah never loses its power to transform hearts and lives. There are certain days in history that become more than dates on a calendar. They become lessons that continue to speak to hearts long after the events themselves have passed. Ashura is one of those days. It is not only a day to remember what happened centuries ago, but also a day to reflect on what those events mean for us today. The challenges may have changed, the world may look different, and our lives may be filled with different struggles, but the lessons of patience, courage, faith, and trust in Allah remain just as relevant as they were then. Every person experiences moments when life feels difficult and uncertain. There are times when the future seems unclear and the burden on the heart feels heavier than we can carry. Some people struggle with financial difficulties and wonder how they will provide for their families. Others face health problems that leave them feeling afraid and exhausted. Some carry emotional wounds caused by betrayal, disappointment, or loss. Others silently fight battles with anxiety, loneliness, or hopelessness that nobody around them fully understands. During these moments, it becomes easy to believe that we are alone in our struggles. We look around and see other people smiling, succeeding, and moving forward while we remain stuck in the same place. Shaitan loves these moments because he whispers that things will never improve and that our difficulties are permanent. But the lessons of Ashura remind believers that hardship has never been the end of the story for those who place their trust in Allah. Patience is one of the greatest qualities a believer can develop, but patience is often misunderstood. Many people think patience means doing nothing and simply waiting for life to improve on its own. In reality, patience is much stronger than that. Patience means continuing to pray, even when the answer seems delayed. It means continuing to work hard even when results are not immediate. It means refusing to lose faith in Allah, even when circumstances make it difficult to remain hopeful. There are people who gave up just moments before relief arrived. There are people who stopped making dua because they believed Allah was no longer listening. There are people who abandoned hope because they could not see the wisdom behind their struggles. Yet history teaches us that Allah's help often arrives at the moment when people believe there is no way forward. The believer learns to trust not only Allah's power, but also His timing. Human beings want answers immediately. We want solutions today and relief tomorrow. We become frustrated by delays because we measure life according to our own schedules and expectations. Allah, however, sees what we cannot see. He knows the opportunities that are coming, the dangers we are being protected from, and the blessings that require preparation before they arrive. Sometimes the delay itself is mercy. Sometimes the closed door is protection. Sometimes the thing we cry over today becomes the thing we thank Allah for removing tomorrow. There are countless people who look back at their lives and realize that the disappointments they once hated became the reasons for blessings they could never have imagined. Standing for truth is another lesson that Ashura continues to teach every generation. Truth is not always popular, and doing the right thing is not always easy. There are moments when honesty costs us opportunities, when integrity makes life more difficult, and when remaining faithful to our values requires sacrifice. Modern life presents these tests in ways that may appear small but carry great significance. A person may be pressured to compromise their principles for money, acceptance, or success. A student may feel pressure to fit in with friends by participating in things they know are wrong. A worker may be encouraged to act dishonestly for personal gain. A business owner may face opportunities that bring profit but require abandoning ethical values. These moments reveal character. They show whether our principles are strong only when life is easy, or whether they remain strong when there is something to lose. The believer understands that temporary worldly success is never worth sacrificing eternal success for. Trust in Allah gives strength during these moments. A person who truly trusts Allah understands that rizq comes from Him alone. Opportunities come from Him. Success comes from Him. If Allah closes one door because we chose honesty, He is capable of opening another door that carries more goodness and more blessings than the one we lost. There is also an important lesson about hope that believers should never forget. Hope in Allah is different from ordinary optimism. Ordinary optimism depends on circumstances improving. Hope in Allah exists even when circumstances remain difficult because it is based on who Allah is rather than what we currently see. A believer may stand in front of a problem with no visible solution and still believe that Allah can create a way out. A believer may carry pain for years and still believe that healing can come. A believer may experience failure after failure and still trust that Allah has not abandoned them. This hope protects the heart from despair. Despair is one of Shaitan's greatest weapons, because once a person loses hope, they stop making dua, stop trying, and stop believing that change is possible. Islam teaches the opposite. As long as Allah is in control, there is always hope. Perhaps someone listening today feels tired from carrying burdens for too long. Perhaps you are waiting for a job, for marriage, for healing, for financial relief, or for peace in your heart. Perhaps you feel forgotten because your prayers seem unanswered, while other people's lives appear to move forward. Remember that Allah has not forgotten you. The delay is not proof of abandonment. The tears you cry are known to Him. The prayers you whisper in the darkness of the night are heard by Him. The fears hidden deep inside your heart are seen by the one who created that heart. There are blessings being prepared that you cannot yet see. There are opportunities moving toward you that you know nothing about. There are doors that Allah can open in a single moment that years of effort alone could never open. The believer continues walking forward because they know that Allah's mercy is greater than their fears and Allah's power is greater than their problems. Ashura reminds us that faith is not proven when life is easy, but when life becomes difficult. It reminds us that truth remains valuable even when standing for it requires sacrifice. It reminds us that patience is never wasted and that trust in Allah is never misplaced. The world changes, generations come and go, and circumstances continue to evolve, but the principles that guide believers remain constant. Patience still brings strength. Trust in Allah still brings peace. Courage still matters. Integrity still matters. Hope still matters. No matter what challenge you are facing today, do not allow hardship to convince you that your story is over. The chapter you are living now may simply be preparing you for a chapter more beautiful than you can imagine. Allah is still writing your story, and He writes with wisdom that never fails and mercy that never ends. If this reminder touched your heart and strengthened your faith, subscribe to my channel and join us for more inspiring reminders that bring us closer to Allah, strengthen our connection with our faith, and remind us that no matter how difficult life becomes, there is always hope for the believer who places their trust in Allah.